Last time we started looking at this Macintosh Classic, but soon discovered that it needed practically all its capacitors replaced. Along with that, it's going to need its disk drive serviced, and I noticed the keyboard is starting to fall apart. We've lots to be getting on with today, but let's first of all fit those new caps. Fitting these capacitors is relatively straightforward. Like their through-hole counterparts, these surface mount caps have a positive and negative side, and the negatives denoted by the solid black line. On our Mac Classic motherboard, positive is denoted by the plus, so very simple, solid black line of capacitor to opposite side of plus symbol, just like that. Now, I'm sure everybody has their preferred method for installing these, but this is just how I do it. First things first, a wee bit of flux, just to help get the solder moving. So what I like to do is just put a wee bit of solder on the tip of the iron, and then just apply that to one of the pads. Then we'll grab the capacitor and tweezers, just hold it beside that pad, bring the iron in, melt the solder, and push the capacitor into place. And then we can go in on the other side. Same again, just a little bit of solder on the iron. Hold the capacitor down with your finger or your thumb. And that is pretty much it. And give the cap a wee wiggle just to make sure it is well on there. That's fine. There always is a wee bit of movement in these, even when they are on. But that's on there pretty good. And that's it. Time to get all the rest of them on. Okay, that is all our new caps on. Is it as good as when it originally left the factory? No, probably not. I am by no means an expert at this soldering business, but they're on there and it works for me. So we'll just go over everything quickly with a bit of IPA on a cotton bud, just to clean up any of that flux that's left. Okay, only one last thing I want to do on this board. You can see here where a bit of the solder mask has flaked off due to the corrosion, and it's exposing the copper trace. So just to seal that, I'm going to go over it with a little bit of green nail varnish. Okay, that hopefully is our logic board finished. I did do a bit of measuring around with the multimeter on continuity, just over the areas where some of the traces were quite heavily corroded, but I can't find any breaks, so hopefully this is now good. Let's move on to the analog board. Just before we start fitting the new capacitors, one thing I forgot to mention last time was the sheer quantity of cracked solder joints. Down here on the power connector, all three of them were cracked. There was one over here on the flyback, a couple up here, and various other points around the board. So I went over and reflowed all of those and inspected all the rest of them. I don't see any other damage, so hopefully they're good. New capacitors. We'll start with the big boy. This is the 400 volt 220 UF. And this one goes on here. So like on the logic board, on here you have a little plus symbol at one side of where the capacitor sits, and that denotes positive. On the capacitor itself, the striped line is negative, so it goes on like that. Just because that is quite a big cap, and I don't want it falling out when we turn this board over to solder it, I'm just going to get a bit of PVC tape. That'll help hold it down. Right, let's get this soldered on. These are quite big traces we're going on to here, so I've cranked the heat up a bit on the iron, and with a little bit of flux, plenty of solder. Let's just hold it there for a second to get the heat into the board. There we are. One down, time to get the rest of them on. That's all the new capacitors fitted. Just one last thing I want to do. We need to coat all the exposed copper on this board, so time for a bit more of our green nail polish. While we wait on this nail polish to dry, let's take out the floppy drive and give it a very quick service. I'm not going to win any art awards anytime soon now, but it's only to stop the copper oxidizing, and it'll do fine. So it looks to me as if the hard drive and floppy drive are going to come out together on this sort of caddy here. I think there's 4 screws on the back holding it on. Let's take those out and see what happens. Right, I'm not going to let this come away. Just like that. Our floppy drive then, let's just give it a bit of a clean. Would you look at the dirt of that just came off the heads? That is unbelievable. Right, that's not too bad for dust. I just want to give the heads a quick going over with a bit of IPA on a cotton bud. Okay. I would normally use some spray lithium grease on the rails as well, but I can't find it, so instead I have this tube of silicone grease, so we'll just put a wee bit of that on the end of a cotton bud, and I'm just going to spread it in here on the various different rails. Time just to start putting everything back together. Oh, actually before we do that, we wondered last time what the capacity of this hard drive was. I thought it might have been 40 megabytes, and yeah, most likely is. Okay, let's put this big jigsaw puzzle back together again, and let's see if it's going to work or if something else on our analog board is going to explode. Right, it is moment of truth time. Is it going to work? Is it going to explode? Or is it just going to sit there and do absolutely nothing? Power on. It's just making a very strange noise. I don't know if you can hear that or not in the microphone. Okay, not working. Let's get the back off again and see if we can see anything obvious. So I stripped everything down to see if I could figure out what was going on. That sound you could hear was actually coming from the speaker. So then I thought to myself, let's measure the 5-volt rail, see what we're getting. It was only sitting at 1 volt. There was then a little bang out of the analog board. And this idiot has put that capacitor in the wrong way around. Whoops. So I went hooking through all the spare capacitors I have, and I have plenty of spares for everything else apart from that one. I'm going to have to go and order another cap. Oh well. 3 days later, and the new capacitors have finally arrived. Got a few spares this time. Let's get this one off and try to put it back on the right way around. Time to put it all back together again, and hopefully this time it will work. Everything's back together, so let's see what happens. Fan's definitely spinning, and we have one very wibbly wobbly screen. Oh well. At least we are getting an image now, but not quite the one I was hoping for. And no chime or anything out of the motherboard. Oh, and a reset. Let's just check what voltages we're getting here. So we're just going to check here at the Molex connector providing power to the hard drive. Just get chassis ground from anywhere, that'll do. So the 5-volt line is only sitting at 3.9, which is kind of low. And presumably this orange one here is meant to be 12 volt. And it's sitting at 10. Again, kind of low. So that's probably part of the reason why it's not booting. Something is pulling the voltages low. How about we disconnect everything we don't need? So we'll take out the memory, the hard drive and the floppy drive. Just disconnect them from the motherboard. Try power on again then, see if it makes any difference. Right, that's all that disconnected. So all we have here is the motherboard and the analog board. Let's see if that makes any difference. So again, we're just getting our wobbly image. And let's just check those voltages one more time. So pretty much the same. 3.97. And 9.9. Okay. How are we going to address that? Is there something wrong still on that analog board? Is there another component that's fried? Or are there any pots on there that I can adjust? Considering I've changed all the capacitors, maybe I need to tweak the output slightly. Anyone, any ideas? Because this one might have me stumped. Gonna go and do a bit of homework and see if I can't figure this out. So I was doing some reading online and I found a little bit of a repair guide for the Mac Classic. It mentions a couple of things that are of interest to us. First of all, there is a pot on the analog board here that we can tweak to adjust the 12 volt level from which all the other voltages are derived. So if we turn that up a wee bit, try and get 12 volts, that should also hopefully bring up the 5 volt level. But we also had that wobbly screen, and according to the guide I found that can be caused by cracked solder joints on the cables going out to the deflection yoke. That's these four here, and the top one was cracked. I did go over this board before, but I obviously missed that one. So before we start playing with that pot, trying to adjust the voltage, let's just put this back together quickly and see if fixing that solder joint is going to fix the issue of the wobbly screen. So this is just the motherboard connected again. Let's see if fixing that cracked solder joint fixes the screen issue. No. That's a little disappointing. I was kind of hoping that would have solved that issue. Oh well. Let's at least see if we can't adjust this voltage. Now, the pot we need to adjust is absolutely buried way in there. I don't even know if you'll be able to make that out in camera, but it's just in there beside that red and black wire. So to do this, how are we going to do this? I don't particularly fancy sticking my hand in there with a metal screwdriver if the high voltage is running. I'm fairly sure that if you disconnect the motherboard, then the analog board doesn't generate any high voltage. I'm fairly sure I've heard that before. So what we'll do is disconnect the motherboard, hook up the hard drive, put a wee bit of load on the 5 and 12 volt, unscrew this, try and hold this out of the way while jamming the multimeter in, trying to adjust the pot. Yeah, this is going to be fun. This is a bit of a balancing act, but hopefully this will work. So the 12 volt line is giving us just 10.3. And this pot I need to adjust is way in here. In fact, let me get a better screwdriver for the job. This screwdriver's got a slightly finer tip on it. Right, try not to kill yourself, Glenn. Oh dear, that didn't seem to do anything. That pot already is adjusted as far as it will go clockwise, which apparently is how you increase the voltage. In fact, that pot seems to be doing naff all. Oh dear. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to call defeat for now. I suppose in the very least we do have power running through this machine now, and it is giving us an image of sorts, even if it is a bit wibbly wobbly. So I need to figure out why the 12 volt and 5 volt rails are sitting so low and why the screen is violently shaking like this. I'm a bit lost, to be honest, so if anyone has any suggestions whatsoever, please stick it in the comment section below. Well, that's it for now. Thanks very much for watching. I can't quite ask for a thumbs up on this one, can I? Because, well, we didn't actually fix it. But if you enjoyed the video, it would be appreciated. Until next time, all I can say is, thanks for watching.